Welcome to It's True, The Dark Files, a new series where we uncover the most chilling, unexplained, and downright terrifying stories of the unknown. From places steeped in cryptic lore to encounters that defy explanation, we bring you the evidence and let you decide. Some legends are harmless, others outright deadly, and today we're diving straight into one of them. Here are 10 places where cryptids are said to lurk and why stepping foot there might be your last mistake. Our first cryptid takes us to Black Hollow, Montana, where we find the Wraithroot. At the heart of Black Hollow lies an ancient tree with roots that twist deep into the unseen. Known as the Wraithroot, its gnarled mass of bark and shadow is said to lure travelers with illusions of shelter, only for its tendrils to drag them beneath the earth. In 1995, a lost camper took refuge beneath the massive roots of the Wraithroot. His last radio transmission described the ground as breathing. His body was never found, but his tent remained untouched, except for deep claw-like grooves where the roots had shifted. If you find yourself in Black Hollow, stay on the trails and avoid sheltering near large exposed roots. Many disappearances have occurred when people strayed too close to the tree line at dusk. If the ground beneath you feels soft, move immediately. You may already be standing on one of the Wraithroot's hidden chambers. More importantly, do not sleep near the hollow. Some claim that those who have fallen asleep there woke up the next morning with dirt in their mouths, as if they had been buried alive. Next on our list is the Drowned Bog, Maine, the Finroot Siren. Once a thriving fishing village, the land surrounding the bog flooded decades ago. Now, on cold nights, fishermen report seeing a pale woman walking the swamp's edge, her song luring animals and sometimes people into the water. In 2005, 2 teenagers were reported missing. After an extensive search, one of them was found. In their interview, they claimed they followed the sound of soft singing near the bog, only for one of them to vanish beneath the murky water. The survivor described seeing a pale hand dragging his friend under. If you find yourself here, take care. If you hear singing near the bog, resist the urge to investigate. The melody is said to be hypnotic, luring people into the swamp even against their will. If you must approach the bog, travel in pairs. Your partner might be the only thing stopping you from walking into the water yourself. Locals say that carrying iron or wearing earplugs may help resist the siren's influence, but there are no guarantees. Once you're waist deep in the water, there's no coming back. At number 3, we go to Red Ridge, Colorado, for the Skulk Claw. High above in the craggy peaks of Red Ridge lurks the Skulk Claw, a thin four-limbed creature with spindly fingers designed for climbing. It's known to mimic mountain lions to lure hunters into traps. In 2013, a climber's GoPro captured unsettling footage. Distant mountain lion calls followed by jerky humanoid movement scaling a cliffside directly toward him. The video ends as the camera falls, never revealing what happened. People have reported family members out for seasonal mountain lion hunts that have never returned. Search and rescue teams in various instances have found torn clothes resting high along rock facings, but no evidence of persons or their remains are ever found. If you find yourself in Red Ridge, avoid climbing alone. Many who have gone missing were experienced climbers who ignored the warnings. If you hear mountain lion calls that sound unnatural, retreat immediately. The Skulk Claw is said to mimic its prey's distress calls. At number 4, we have the Hollow-Eyed Man in the Vesper Caverns of Kentucky. The limestone caves run deep beneath Kentucky, but the Vesper Caverns hold a dark secret. Explorers report glimpses of a tall, thin man with hollow eye sockets. He doesn't follow, he waits. The Hollow-Eyed Man is not just an observer, he's the predator of memory and perception. He does not need to chase his victims. Instead, he lingers in the periphery, always just out of clear sight. Those who wander too far into the caverns describe an overwhelming sense of being watched, but never truly seeing what's watching them. His presence is felt in the form of shifting shadows, the inexplicable dimming of lanterns, and an eerie silence that swallows sound. It is believed that he feeds on awareness itself, Witnesses who have escaped describe moments of sudden confusion, entire hours missing from their memory, and a profound sense of displacement, as if they have walked beyond time itself. Some report hallucinations of familiar voices calling to them from deeper inside the cave, only to find themselves back at the entrance with no recollection of turning around. Others recall seeing his figure just for a moment, but when they turned to tell their companions, they found themselves alone. But his most terrifying trait, he does not let you remember seeing him. If you leave the caverns feeling like something was off, but can't quite put your finger on it, then you were probably already in his presence. In 1972, a spelunker named Gerald Marks was found wandering miles from the caves, disoriented and mumbling about the man with empty eyes. His flashlight was melted, despite no signs of fire. If you find yourself in the area, never explore the Vesper Caverns without a backup light source. If your flashlight malfunctions, or your battery is drained unexpectedly, leave immediately. Many believe the hollow-eyed man feeds off the darkness itself. Those who have encountered him report that the air becomes thick and suffocating, as if something unseen is pressing down on them. If your group suddenly goes quiet and no one remembers why, you are in danger. If you find yourself deeper in the caverns than you should be with no memory of how you got there, turn back immediately. And if you see a tall, thin shadow waiting at the next turn, it's already too late. You won't even remember this warning. Number 5 takes us to Widow's Point in Oregon for the Salt Wraith. The Salt Wraith is not a simple ghost. She is an echo of something far older, something woven into the sea itself. Those who have seen her describe a figure barely held together, her body shifting between solid and mist, her form sometimes a woman in tattered clothes, other times a little more than a wisp of salt spray. It is said that her presence brings storms, and those who see her are often found washed ashore days later, their lungs filled with seawater, even if they were miles from the coast. Some sailors believe she was a widow who threw herself into the sea after her husband never returned, cursed to wander Widow's Point forever. Others claim she is something older, something that waits for the desperate and the grieving, those already close to the edge, and once she whispers to you, you're already lost. In 1986, a lighthouse keeper reported seeing a woman in tattered clothing walking into the ocean during a storm. When he followed, she was gone, but his boots were encrusted with salt, despite dry ground. Never walk Widow's Point during a storm. If you find strange salt-like crystals on your skin or clothes, do not touch them. They are said to be a sign that the Wraith has marked you. Avoid looking directly into the mist when the wind shifts. Sailors say this is when she chooses her next victim, and if you ever hear the whispers but see no one around, it's already too late. The tide will be coming in for you. Number 6 takes us to the Bone Tree Guardian, located in Devil's Thicket, Louisiana. Deep in the swamp, trees grow from more than just the earth. The Bone Tree Guardian is a massive ancient entity, blending seamlessly with the gnarled cypress. Its bark is rough with the impressions of faces, as if something once human had been absorbed into the wood. Some hunters claim to have seen it move, its massive form shifting between the trees when no one is looking, its root-like limbs dragging something unseen through the mud. Those who have witnessed it say that it judges trespassers, as if it peers into their very souls. If it finds you are of good spirit, you're allowed to leave. But those with impure souls who enter the swamp, they disappear without a trace. Sometimes their remains become part of the trees. In 1991, a poacher was found miles from his hunting spot, eyes wide open and totally drained of blood. His rifle was snapped clean in two, and moss grew from the wound on his chest. Stay out of Devil's Thicket after dark. Hunters say that even animals refuse to enter certain parts of the swamp, and those who do often turn up dead, drained of blood. If the air suddenly becomes still, leave immediately. Many say this is the guardian watching you, deciding if you belong in his domain. And whatever you do, never take anything from the swamp, not even a fallen branch. The last person who tried was found weeks later, face down in the bayou, with moss growing from his throat. The Hollow Gull of Silent Strand, Iceland, clocks in at number 7. A bird with no eyes should not be able to see, and yet the hollow gull knows when you are watching. It hovers, motionless for hours, unaffected by the wind, its beak hanging slightly open as if whispering something too quiet to hear. It does not screech, it does not flap its wings, and sometimes, if you listen closely, It speaks in voices that shouldn't exist. Fishermen say that when the hollow gull appears, the sea becomes deadly. Boats capsize, bodies vanish, and sometimes the sky itself turns dark too quickly. The clouds rolling in as if they too are answering its call. But the worst part? Those who lock eyes with it are never the same. Some refuse to speak about what they saw. Others are found drifting at sea, their eyes missing, their mouths twisted into silent screams. In 2015, a group of tourists recorded a flock of birds suddenly going silent before a single, larger figure emerged, its hollowed-out face glistening in the mist. Moments later, a violent storm rolled in. If you see a single, unmoving gull standing in the distance, do not approach. The hollow gull is said to be a harbinger of disaster, and those who look into the empty sockets are said to dream of drowning for weeks afterwards. Some say it can speak with the voices of the lost, repeating the final words of those who perished in the sea. And if it ever calls out your name, run. The storm has already chosen you. For number 8, we go to Vermont, in the Cradle Pines, for the Lantern Widow. In the depths of Vermont's Cradle Pines, a single swinging lantern moves through the mist, though no one is holding it. The Lantern Widow is a ghost, a trickster, and perhaps something even worse. Some say she was once a woman searching for her lost husband, wandering with her lantern until she herself disappeared. Others believe she never was human to begin with. Witnesses claim that her lantern moves without rhythm, swinging too fast, too slow, or stopping altogether before flickering back to life somewhere new. Those who follow it report time loss, winding up in locations that shouldn't exist on any map, with hours missing from their memory. Her face is never seen, only glimpsed in distorted reflections in the lantern's glow, a hint of something skeletal, grinning in the dark. In 2009, a park ranger found a lost camper who claimed he'd followed a glowing light for hours, only to realize it wasn't leading him out, but deeper into the forest. When he turned back, the light vanished. If you see a light swinging through the forest at night, turn around. The Lantern Widow's glow is said to draw people deeper into the trees, where the path twists and disappears. If you follow her too far, you might find yourself somewhere that doesn't exist on any map. Locals warn that those who look directly into her lantern never come back, and those who do are never quite the same. The Iron Lake in Minnesota clocks us in at number 9, with the Drowned Heart. A beast too large for the frozen lake should not be able to stand on it, and yet the Drowned Heart does. A massive elk-like creature with a twisted rack of antlers. It emerges from the ice in the dead of winter, a harbinger of death. Its eyes are hollow and filled with mist, its breath visible even in the stillest air. Some believe it is the spirit of something ancient, bound beneath the lake for centuries, only able to surface when the ice is at its weakest. Locals claim hoofprints appear overnight, leading onto the frozen lake, but never from it. The few who have seen it say that when it moves, the ice does not crack beneath it, but footsteps behind them always seem to. In 1993, an ice fisher reported seeing antlers breach the surface before the ice cracked beneath him. He surfaced, but his brother, fishing nearby, vanished without a trace the same week. If you hear a low, bell-like sound under the ice, move away immediately. Fishermen believe the Drowned Heart announces itself before the lake claims another soul. If you see hoofprints leading out onto the ice but never returning, it's best to leave. The lake is not as frozen as it seems. And if the reflection of its glowing antlers appears beneath you, don't bother running. It's already underneath. And finally, at number 10, the Crimson Shifter of Bleeding Oaks, Georgia. Deep in Georgia's oldest forest, the oak trees bleed. Thick red sap oozes from the bark, pooling at the roots like blood. Locals claim the woods are home to something that does not have a form of its own, a shapeshifter that feeds on the blood spilled in its domain. It is known as the Crimson Shifter, and those who enter its territory often leave changed, if they leave at all. Witnesses describe seeing someone familiar to them, only to realize it wasn't. Hunters claim to have tracked their own footprints in the mud, doubling back as if someone had been following them step for step. And the deeper you go, the more things stop making sense. Shadows stretch in the wrong directions. Voices echo but don't sound quite right. And if you look away from your reflection in a puddle, it moves without you. In 1980, a local hunter was found hanging upside down from a tree. drained of blood, though no wounds were visible. Nearby, claw marks circled the oak's trunk, each deeper than the last. Avoid the bleeding oaks during a full moon. If you see deep claw marks spiraling up the trunks, turn back. Something is marking its territory. Some say that the shifter is drawn to the scent of fresh blood, and even a small cut can be enough to summon it. If you notice the shadows moving unnaturally, or see eyes staring back from the hollows of the trees, leave immediately, because once it sees you, it's already taken your shape. If this list hasn't convinced you yet, maybe they will when you're out there alone, and the shadows stretch just a little too far. The next time you hear a voice calling your name, see an unfamiliar light in the woods, or find tracks that shouldn't be there, ask yourself, are you really alone? There are places in this world that do not welcome us, places where the rules are different, where something else is watching. The only question is, will it let you leave? If you enjoyed this dive into the unknown, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode of It's True, The Dark Files, or It's True, the series. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever been somewhere that felt wrong? We'd love to hear your stories. And remember, it's true if you believe it.